What's up, fam? It's Broke Capitalist coming at you on a Monday with what you could consider a public service announcement and a warning, maybe, or I don't know, just a mirror, putting it up to society. So we go over here on your screen. I got some bullet points for a presentation I'm gonna run through this week, basically. But I'm gonna dive right into it. Hey, if you've been back, thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. Put the notification bells on, but share this with a friend because it's going to be important to them to have this information, at least to prepare you for what's coming down the pipeline. I think most of you, if you're looking at my mug, you are somewhat aware of what's happening. This thing is being challenged by foreign entities. You got something called the BRICS nations on the come up, if you want to say, that's trying to displace this thing. And if you're like, I don't care, what does that mean? Well, I get it, but you're going to want to care because you're going to feel the effects of this thing actually dwindling in value. It's going to hurt. How much is going to hurt? I don't know, but it's going to hurt. So let's get into how this thing dwindling will affect you and the ones you love, and how we got to this, how we get to this state, right? All right, so in 1941, here's a little history lesson for those who need it or don't need it, but I need to put things into perspective. So with that said, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and ask the question, what is success? What does that mean to you? And I think people of my age and a person 20 years old will probably have a different answer to that today, 2023. But I sincerely believe that what does success mean to you? The answer came from the same premise from 1776 until recent history. Meaning historically in America, that question was based on values such as individual freedom and individual responsibility, and a reality that life is hard and often unfair. So if you have that premise, like that's what you believe, right? You believe in values such as individual responsibility, individual freedom, and life is hard and often unfair. And then with that in mind, you answer that question, a lot of times your answer would be, since 1776 up until recently, family. God, love, country, stuff like that. God, love of God, love of country, love of family, or family, country, God, whatever. But you were successful based on what you've accomplished and your family. Now, of course, you would add on, well, I can, let's say, as a man, I have been able to provide a very nice house for my wife and children, right? We have a new car, or we have a toaster oven, right? Or, a big TV that weighs 800 pounds and it's in the middle of our living room. I am successful. Well, I think that definition has, in recent history, changed a lot, right? There's remnants of it still around. Like if you're a 25-year-old guy and you just got married and you got a wife and a kid, yeah, you feel successful if you're providing for your wife. You got the, flat screen TV on the wall and your kids are in nice clothes and stuff like that. But the premise in which you're coming from, I think society is changing that. And I want to get to how society has changed. Like that premise on which that question was always based on has changed. And I want to get to why and how and the effects of it. So I want to start with a term often used called intent and effects. So the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. So just keep that in mind as I'm blabbering on here. All right, so in 1941, well before I was thought of, something happened. Well, the Federal Reserve in this place called Bretton Woods, the Federal Reserve was crowned, basically, the world's reserve currency. This thing here, right? Everybody in the world was chasing after this dollar. Why? Because everybody in the world believed in this dollar. They believed that, hey, if I trade my pesos in for $1, and then if I need to change that dollar for gold or silver, I'll get it, because they have the faith in the U.S. government, rule of law, and the American working people who would pay their taxes. All right, I'm really doing a aerial view of this stuff from 50,000 feet or whatever. All right, so and that was in 41. So with the effect of that is a higher standard of living for everybody who lives in America, basically. All right, so if you don't know why, there's other videos for that, but I'm not here to explain all of that. But in 1971, what happened to the world's reserve currency, which is this here? Now, this here, I know a lot of you think is the government money, but it's not. It's a Federal Reserve note, which is a semi-government, basically a private corporation that prints money for the government. I digress. But that note in 1971 was no longer attached to a commodity like gold, right? Or gold. So that's huge. That is huge. What did that do? So in theory, for every dollar, you should be, back in the day, you should be able to receive an equivalent amount in physical gold. Well, in 1971, they were like, nah, we don't need that. We don't need the gold part. Just believe me, we'll pay you back. And guess what? They did, right? So while everybody's still, dealing with this thing, it's no longer attached to anything physical, right? And what happened? Well, in let's say 75, I could take one of these. And I always say, I can go buy 25 pieces of penny candy, a Snickers bar, a Suzy Q, and a soda. If not a Suzy Q, a bag of chips and a soda, right? With this thing here. Now today, 50-some years later, I can't buy any of that with $1. Okay? But if I had a silver dollar, everything I could buy in 1975 with a silver dollar, put it in a grocery bag in 1975, I can buy the equivalent with that silver dollar, right? That's another story for another day, but just ride with me, rock with me on this one. Now, what happens when you decouple this from basically reality, right? It's not attached to anything. You just print it out of thin air, which they do. What happens? Well, this is where government good intentions leads people straight into hell, right? So what happens after that? You get what's called, a lot of people on the conservative side of the political spectrum called the welfare state, right? You got politicians saying, hey, we got money to help you, or you, right? So they start coming up with all these social programs that we didn't have before. That was the intent, was to help. The effect is what we now know is fatherless homes. Now I'm getting ahead of myself here, but something else happened in the 1970s, and that was a new form of wheat was created. And why do I know this? Because I'm sensitive to gluten, and I went down this rabbit hole about that. So yeah, there was a new strand of wheat that was created in the early 70s to help give wheat a higher yield, which allowed us as humans to feed more humans with this new strand of wheat. That's all in good. That's totally fine. What else happened in in the 70s was glyphosate was being used in the harvesting of that wheat, right? So a pesticide, Roundup, was being doused on this new wheat for even higher yield. Okay, fine. More people can eat. The intentions are more people can eat, right? What else happened in the 1970s? Well, Roe v. Wade. Now women have the right to an abortion. Now the intent of that is great, Women, if you don't want to have a child by someone who, gave you a child illegally, or if you got some messed up family members, stuff like that. So the intent is good. The effect, which no one wants to talk about because it's hard, right? What do you take away when you have a welfare state that makes the father irrelevant and abortion that basically takes away any consequences for, let's say, bad decisions, right? Main thing, responsibility, right? Fathers are supposed to be there in some capacity to teach their children how to be responsible, right? If you take fathers out of the home, that less lessons and responsibility is given to children. If you take away the consequences of having sex with someone you don't love, you barely know, you're not sure about, you're not financially stable, well, then you will start having more kids. And when they have more kids, guess what? The government comes in and cushions that hard blow of I'm 16, 17, 18, no means to take care of myself, and now I got a kid. Well, the government will take care, right? I'm not making moral judgment calls. I'm talking about what has happened, right? So we get into the 80s, and you see the side effects of these fatherless homes. Like I said, it results in fewer lessons in individual responsibility. Now, going back to what success is, the whole premise of being American basically was individual responsibility, right? You got less and less of that. And also, in the 80s, you get the crack babies, right? It'll come up. And so in the 80s, we were like, oh my God, we got all these crack babies. What's going to happen in the year 2000? You're going to have all these crack babies running amok, da-da-da-da-da, right? Didn't really see too much of that. Maybe we have, but no one says crack baby anymore, really. And what also happened, because I'm from Detroit, in the 80s, you saw this, what the media called white flight, but what in reality was green flight. If you had this, you left Detroit. Why? Because before people left, manufacturing jobs left, and they took talent with them. So I remember clearly, like one of the first factories to leave Detroit didn't move to Mexico, they moved to Texas. And a whole bunch of people were moving to Texas. And then they just kept going. It's like somebody just opened the door and everybody's like, come on, let's keep going, just leave Detroit. And what happens? People without this couldn't leave. And the opportunities are not gone. So what comes in, you got a lot of fatherless homes where people don't teach responsibility. You got a lot of fatherless homes where boys grow up irresponsible and girls grow up irresponsible. And then you got an explosion in teen pregnancy. That's all right, because the government is spending all this money because they can just print it out of nothing. Here you go, So let's move on. Now in the 90s, unknowingly, a lot of bedrock definitions started to change. One of my favorite things ever created was capitalism. And in the 90s, that became synonymous with greed. And you all know that, I can't think of the movie right now, the title of the movie, but he was like, greed is good or whatever. And that was just, oh my God, just totally misrepresented capitalism. And it's been misrepresented ever since, before and after that. And another more important thing to me is Black culture. And that became synonymous with like socialism and Marxism. So like, it's a Black thing. If you take the mask off of that statement or concept, what's behind that is a lot of Marxist values, socialist values and ideologies. And over the course of time, it kind of blended together. So now that urban Black America's value system, belief systems, are almost synonymous with Marxist socialist ideologies and values and belief systems. All right. So that's in the 90s. But what else happened in the 90s? Participation trophy kids were born, right? So now we got a total shift from, what's success to you? Well, you could ask a little kid who was 13, who was trying out for the baseball team and couldn't make it. And then he tried out again the next year, couldn't make it, tried out again the next year, and he finally made it. That gratification that he accomplished something, right? Now, there's going to be kids who didn't make the team, period. But hopefully those kids had great parents, and they'll say, like little Johnny, you're not meant to be an NFL running back. Why don't you go into accounting? Try something, try dart throwing or something else. Try and accomplish something else. But in the 90s, we got the participation babies born. And what's going to happen? Stay tuned, right? In 2000, the internet put a lot of future pressure on blue collar work and manufacturing, solidifying a service-based economy in America, right? So now we've pretty much moved out of manufacturing. Everything in your house is made in China, in Taiwan, Vietnam, and that's gone. It's pretty much gone. I remember when I was a kid, if you wanted furniture, everybody got their furniture from North Carolina. When I say everybody, I mean pretty much everybody in the world. I don't know no furniture made in the United States. Now, I could be wrong. I'm sure there's hand craftsmen here somewhere else. I don't know of a furniture factory in the United States. A major one anyway. What else is happening? No one born in the last 15 years has eaten food without glyphosate. It's in our food supply. That pesticide is in the food supply. I was fortunate enough to have a good 10 years without it. And my parents and grandparents, most of their life without it, right? But the younger guys, your entire existence, you've been fed glyphosate. It's in the food supply, right? And I'm gonna show you some charts here in a minute. What else has happened? The LGBTQ community is on the rise. Femininity and masculinity is in decline. That is no doubt. The last time, and I thought about this. The last time I saw a feminine woman that I interacted with in the United States, who just met the definition of feminine, not weak, super subservient with her head down. No, just a woman, feminine woman who her essence was femininity, right? That was 1989 in North Carolina. She was what we call a Southern Belle. And I wrote about it in my book, Our Two Societies. It's ridiculously sad that most people don't even know what a feminine woman is. And I'm including women. Now, masculinity's been taking a hit. And I got some aids, some visual aids here, and I'm gonna play this with you, just to give a perspective on some things.
And we are destroying family, as we know, because look at me, I'm in my 30s. I'm not settled down. I don't have children. I don't have this family unit that I want so terribly, because no matter how hard I try, that feminism that I was raised with always tend to overshadow my relationship. Because in my head, I know best, right? Like I know what's right. I know, because I saw it growing up. I saw it modeled to me growing up. Like a woman knows everything. We're so powerful.
But the idea that men are supposed to be the head of the household, do you understand that that is killing men?
That's killing men.
It is killing men.
Don't let them die.
That's the craziest thing I ever heard this week. Like, come on, man. It's killing men. Unfortunately, as I often say, she's mad in the wrong direction. Yes, the pressure to be a man and provide for a family is difficult, but it's not because of like toxic masculinity or women or the patriarchy, right? Y'all mad in the wrong direction. Go up to 1971 and they took this off the gold standard. Back then, Do you realize people could work a factory job and raise 9 kids and live in a nice house in Detroit? I'm a witness. University District, go look it up. It's next to Sherwood Forest and Palmer Woods in Detroit. Look it up. It was a multicultural neighborhood in the 70s, 80s. And you had factory workers, like management, basically, Blacks, whites, Asian, Jews, living in harmony until the jobs start to leave, right? You can raise, my best friend is one of 9, right? His father was the sole breadwinner. He didn't own Chrysler. He just worked at Chrysler. Now, if you work at Chrysler, you probably got a part-time job and you live by yourself, maybe. I don't know. But your labor hasn't diminished, but what your labor is denominated in has diminished. So let me keep going. And I think, yeah. So that femininity and masculinity, now masculinity is toxic. The reason is I can agree with that, if I did agree with it, is because for basically a generation or two, no one is teaching responsibility. You can't have masculinity without responsibility. If you do, what you're going to get is mass shootings. You're going to get mad. You're going to get men mad at every woman that crosses their path. You're going to get boys trying to show how tough they are by showing a gun. Instead of just being tough, you want to show like you're tough. Even after you get a $250 million contract, have a kid, yet come from a 2-parent household, you still want to hustle backwards. Sound like somebody y'all know, right? Even though this guy had a 2-parent household, he's running around hustling backwards, right? I ain't gonna mention no names, but you kind of know what I'm talking about, right? I did a video on him before. Well, his dad, if there's anything he may have misstepped in, is teaching responsibility. I'm sure he did the best he could and all that, but think about it. Back in the day, not only would his dad teach him responsibility, his uncles would teach him responsibility, his neighbors would teach him responsibility, the pastor at the church would teach him responsibility. James Evans on Good Time would teach him responsibility. The Jeffersons would teach him. So there was all these influences to teach young boys how to be responsible. And that has dwindled away. And we're seeing the effects of that. So now we're going to get up to the 2015s. And the participation kids are now coming into adulthood, right? And they don't believe in equal opportunity. They want equal outcomes, right? We all grew up believing, and even our forefathers believed all men are created equal, but they also believe life is hard and life is not fair. But these participation trophy kids believe that life shouldn't be hard and everything should be fair, right? It shouldn't be, you know what? I feel like a woman, and it ain't right that you guys look at me with this beard and my body structure and my voice, and if you see me naked, you should believe that I'm a woman. You wouldn't get that without stripping away responsibility and stripping away that, if you want to call it, perspective of life is hard. It's not fair, right? Now I know, now I'm gonna keep moving. But in 2023, what do we have here? We have the effects of a diet that's been full of this pesticide that has most of us obese, myself included, and unhealthy. When I say most, I mean, if America hasn't reached the 50% range as far as obesity, is coming soon, right? And if you don't believe me, you can believe this very, very intelligent woman who presented before Congress in 2016. If you've been to the channel, you've probably seen this before. Glyphosate correlations with disease. If every TV commercial you see, because 75% of advertisement is from a pharmaceutical company, if you're watching mainstream TV, you can equate, there's a correlation between that and glyphosate. Now, this is 2016. 1 in 3 overweight, 1 in 6 learning disabilities, 1 in 9 asthma, 1 in 10 ADHD, 1 in 12 food allergy. When I was growing up, nobody was allergic to peanuts, man. I mean, got a couple of people, but come on, man. 1 in 20 had seizures, 1 in 54 males, autism. And now they're trying to say, I ain't gonna go there. Okay, 1 in 68 is now autism. That was in 2016. And then 50%, half of all children have chronic illness or are overweight. This is the new normal in our country in 2016, right? There's plenty of statistics here. Autism prevalence, infant mortality rates, herbicides in corn, like this, we eating corn, we eating wheat, we eating soy. You had Cracker Jack cereal, you've had Budweiser beer, have you had popcorn? Do you drink any beer? Like, it's in wine, now it's in breast milk. These things affect you physically, right? And if you ever question, like, if you ever wake up one day and like, what is going on? It's them Democrats or it's them Republicans or you are what you eat, right? That has something to do with it. And obesity over time. Look at this. They go back to the 1700s. And when that stuff got in our food supply, boom, hockey stick. Autism, same thing. This goes back to 91. It gets in the food supply real good in the late 90s, boom, up the charts. Diabetes. When we were growing up, every once in a while you came across a friend whose grandmother got diagnosed with sugar. Now, everybody, like, come on, man. You can't name 10 people you know that one of them's not diabetic. I bet you can. Right? All right, so let's get back to this. I think I made my point on that. Now, testosterone levels are in 2023, testosterone levels at our low, reproduction rates are at historic lows. The majority of Americans are obese or soon will be, and they're definitely unhealthy. I mean, the beer disease, 19, that wasn't killing people. It was that plus, you're asthmatic, you're overweight, you got other problems, right? You can survive. I mean, the survival rate of just that is really high. It's like 90-something, 98%, you're going to survive it if you don't have comorbidities, right? So now here's something we see on the internet a lot. These shows, which I like watching, like guilty pleasure. What's his name? Samuels, what's his name? I can never, people's names, I'm just too old, man. But when he's just dissing these women for being delusional. Well, I think, it's my firm belief that taking that perspective that life is hard and life is sometimes unfair, replacing that with a different perspective has a lot of women delusional in their worth and a lot of men feeling irrelevant. Right? Like the young lady was saying, it's killing these men, the patriarchy. No, it's the perspective in which we've been duped into accepting that life is supposed to be fair. Like life is supposed to be easy. It's not. What did Jordan Peterson say? Pick up the heaviest thing you can find and carry it. That's the best advice you can give to any man. And it's great advice for women. But for a young boy, a young man, that's the best advice you can give. Go out there and accomplish something. I ain't talking about acquiring stuff like, oh, I got a new car, I got a new, TV, I got new Nikes, Jordans. That's consumption. I'm talking about production. Go out there, find the heaviest thing you can carry, and you're going to feel good about yourself. You won't feel all this ridiculous outside pressures, right? Because you can stand on your own and say, look, I accomplished a college degree in math, right? I started a business. It's a lawnmower business, but I got 2 employees right now. Or I'm trying to come up with a system that does ABC instead of I'm trying to buy another pair of Jordan, right? That ain't gonna make you feel like nothing but a customer, right? So let's keep going. Now, and when you talk about these delusional women, man, I don't know what planet I woke up in, but anytime I see a chick that's like 5'2", 250 pounds, 3 kids, and 36 years old, talking about she's anything other than a 5 and below, as far as being her value in the dating pool marketplace, she's delusional. There's nothing wrong with being a 5. What's wrong with being a 5 is when you think you were 8, 9, and 10. There's a dude out there that's a 5. Get with him. And y'all, 5 plus 5, hopefully y'all make a baby and that baby turns out to be a 10. But the fact that you're delusional as a woman and you out there dating men who feel useless and irrelevant, what do we get? We get a society with a birth rate, right? So let's look back at this note. The Federal Reserve note will no longer be the world's currency. Now, in my lifetime and yours, unless you were like born in 1935 and looking at this channel, you haven't experienced a world in which this wasn't the world's currency. This whole time, our standard of living is basically based off this. It used to be this plus production, but we don't produce nothing. We produce ideas, and those ideas get implemented in China in manufacturing places in China, Vietnam, or whatever, right? So we produce ideas, but we don't have a manufacturing hub. So now this is based on faith and credit. And when you got 143 nations in August supposed to meet to basically say, nah, we don't want this no more. What's going to happen to your standard of living? How many pairs of Nikes you think you can afford when this ain't the reserve currency no more? How you going to come up to a girl in 2028 and you ain't accomplished nothing in your life, and you won't be able to accomplish nothing? Think about that. If you're a woman with 2 or 3 kids now and you're on welfare, talking about you deserve an 8 or 10, what happens when this goes away and possibly welfare goes away? Because you getting your welfare because the United States selling T-bills. What happens when people don't want you? What happens when China stops buying the T-bills? Who's gonna pay you then? Right? So concepts, going back to 2023, concepts like individual freedom and individual responsibility are dead. They're just dead. It's all about group identity and community responsibility. That's what's taking its place. Group identity, community responsibility is social Marxism, right? Now, back to what is success. Currently, the question no longer is based on values such as individual freedom and individual responsibility and a reality that life is hard. And you need a little luck, right? It's now based on group identity and community responsibility, basically the government, and a false reality that life should be fair. This experiment, I don't see, is over. I don't see a way to turn this around to get back to America. I just don't. Please share in the comments a way for us to turn this tide back where success means a happy family, where the father is happily supporting his family and the mother is happily supporting her family, right? And they're growing, they're raising children to be responsible members of society, where they have jobs that attribute to the creation of something important, I don't see that happening. I just don't. And when this physical paper was starting this month, they're doing away with this physical paper. It's called the Fed dollar program, something like that. You guys correct me in the comments, but they started in April. It's not, me and you won't affect us in April. It'll affect us down the line, but this is already started. They're doing away of the physical currency, and you're going to get cryptocurrency, and that's going to be on your phone, right? What does that mean? You're like, yeah, I don't have to deal with dirty money and coins and all that. They can track every transition you do for eternity. All of them, right? So whatever the government says is illegal, you won't be able to transact in it. Just think about right now, if you have chronic pain and you didn't want to be on like fentanyl for pain relief, you want to be on cannabis. Well, cannabis is federally, that's still illegal. But hey, you can still buy it because you got physical cash. Well, you won't be able to do that. So I hate to leave you like, it's over. I think we have to come to a realization that it is over. The American we knew is dead. It ain't dying, it's dead. So going forward, what are we doing? I think now we are the rebellion. We have to come up with, if we want individual responsibility and individual liberty to be a thing, to be a concept that people value, we have to recognize that that concept has been beaten into the dirt, and it won't come back the way it was bestowed upon us. We have to come up with a new way to make those values relevant. And one or two things can happen. We get beaten to submission and start over from scratch. Or before we get beat into submission, we put the brakes on this thing and say, okay, that America's gone, but we can't do away with what made America great. And what made America great isn't white people, right? What made America bad isn't slavery. What makes America great is the concepts of individual freedom. But if you're going to have individual freedom, you must have individual responsibility. Without those two together, you basically get in chaos. All right, y'all, that's enough of me talking. Hope you got something out of this. I'm going to try this week to just kick out shorter videos on these subjects here. So stick around, come back, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share this with a friend. Prepare them for what's coming, because CNN is already talking about this is over. And I always say, if it's on CNN, it's over. Like CNN is like 2-4 months behind, right? So this is gone. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out.
I just wanted to remind you guys to check out thebrokecapitalist.com. You'll find some awesome books there, including a historical fantasy fiction series that I star in, called Ideas in Blood.